Hi, welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophie, your pilot into the universe of Chinese, and we are going to continue our August special edition centered around the concept of life. And for life, the language creator used plant-based symbol because there are all kinds of life forms, right? Visible, invisible, in the air, on the ground, under the ground, in the ocean, life forms, all kinds. But for agrarian society, that life form mostly represented by what's visible, what's close to human everyday living, and which is also not themselves because they're characters to express humans. So for plants or life, therefore, is most likely the visible life form, right? So that's the plants that's used. So plants have also, again, different forms of plants. So here I'm giving you two examples. One is a tree, one is grass. And you can see the shared property over there is this trident-looking thing. And trident-looking thing is Chinese way to express it's a sun-facing, because photosynthesis is the main thing for plant, right? So they have to grow upward like this, and therefore trident. Why trident? Because Chinese actually express a lot of, when they express multitudes, many. Sometimes they repeat 2 times, most of the times they repeat only 3 times. 3 times means many already. There's no point of repeating something multiple times on paper. 3 is enough to show you it's a repetition, it's multitude of something. So this almost you can look at it as either grass blades or tree branches, but anything that's on the formation of a plant that's facing, growing toward the sun. So the top is the plant symbol, and it's has its root stick into the ground. So the first horizontal line is the ground level, and the second line is the indication of the soil surrounding the root, meaning it's still alive, it's still rooted. So that's the symbol for life. I think it's a very reasonable. And 生手 is today's concept. So we have come across 手 multiple times, and for most of Chinese characters, just like a plant, use a trident symbol, right? For most of the time, hand symbol in Chinese use 3-finger hand. So instead of drawing out all 5 fingers, 3-finger hand symbols are mostly used. And from bottom right of the screen, I mean, in the frame, it's kind of like a screen, right, back then. But in this case, when we have hand just by itself, it's fully depicted. So it's a 5-finger. And you can see, okay, that's the structure. You can see all 5 fingers. Right? It's like a child's drawing, nothing fancy. But then you see, okay, what's the middle finger is doing there? Okay, it took me quite some time after covering multiple, almost 2 years worth of One Word a Day, going through Chinese ancient forms of icons that make meaning. I finally get it, like why the middle finger is pointing toward the right. Okay, because there is another very similar looking Chinese icon that looks almost exactly the same as the hand. So we cannot guarantee in written form that even if it's the same culture, people sharing the same icons, right? When before the standardized, like a printing, right, to standardize things, individuality when copying the icons from person to person are going to cause trouble, right? So the variations of like a slight difference between characters can be blurry. I mean, in fact, it's very prevalent in the Chinese language that from generation to generation or from the original book, and somebody made a copy of it by literally manual copy of the same script, right? During that process, mistakes happen. Things just slightly change. I mean, in later generations, things got interpreted differently from the original meaning. So to avoid a confusion of this symbol, which means hand, And another symbol, which means fur or hair on the surface of the animal that got fur. They also like got this horizontal spreading out structure to mean fur. It's also a visual representation of that. Like they end up looking the same. So how could that be solved? Later language creators add this one tilted line. So the hand, everybody standardized this time. Point toward right means hand. And this slant point toward the left means hair. And so I'm very happy that I discovered that just simply by looking at so many different characters and finally, okay, these two pair together. Then then I know this right tilted middle finger doesn't really mean Chinese is emphasizing something special about the middle finger, but it's a differentiator to separate it from another similar looking, could be confusion causing character. So therefore, this is a differentiator to make sure it's a hand symbol. Okay, so raw hand. I mean, this is a life, right? Life in its raw form, or in our everyday living, we can imagine it to be uncooked form. So in Chinese language, anything that's uncooked would be regarded sheng, life in its original form. It may not have life anymore, like raw meat, right? Or raw seafood. They may be captured and they may already become, food to be on the table, but it's before adding heat to it or transform it in a major way. So that's considered raw meat. That's the kind of raw. And Chinese use live to mean raw at the same time, like it's in its original form. So what do you mean, 生熟? Okay, in the previous episode, we're talking about 生疏, right? Something like you're no longer in full command of like the language or whatever skill you have been using, but then stop using and then forget about it. Then it becomes 生疏. Now 生熟 is similar, except you didn't really have that pre-episode of ever using it before. It means you come here to the scene as a new hand, like a new, you're coming into a arena, I guess, or a field that you've never been to before. And your hand is raw, like you haven't even touched anything yet. And so that's 生熟. In English, the concept of that is newbie, like you just get into this field. In this case, is this businessman, a lot of business concepts, and there's a ton of question marks. The first thing you get into a field is to pick up all the jargons up there. And I think jargons, according to some people, is intentionally put there as a barrier to kind of safeguard their, secret domain, to keep a little bit, barrier from outsiders, so that the insiders can tell easily how newbie or non-newbie you are, right? Just by testing out the jargons, So 生熟 in Chinese actually means you're new to this field. Your hand is raw, it's uncooked. You haven't even try it out yet. But I mean, newbie is, there are also different kinds of or phases of newbie, like however many years, and it may take a long time for you to not to consider yourself as a newbie anymore in any of the field, and all that. What is it called? I forgot how to say. Okay, forget about it. So newbie is Chinese 生熟. We use the hand to mean skill, basically. So I guess in the previous generations, like today, 21st century, right? People work in front of computer. So the importance of hand, I mean, is typing. Mostly is typing to give instructions to computer what to do, or communicating with coworkers. So you use a lot of hand in that way. But in the past, using hand most likely as a craft person or as a farm hand, right? So hand as a major output part of the human body, then used in the Chinese language to mean if you have a hand on something, if you you have a good use of your hand in a particular field. So 生手 just means it's raw. You're new. Okay, so that's it. Catching into the currency of thinking about it one more day with Sophie. See you another day.